First thing I'd like to do is acknowledge that Canada College resides on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and within lands protected by the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850. This land is occupied by the people of Nipissing First Nation, Treaty Number 10, and the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850 since time immemorial. I'd also like to thank the First People Center for welcoming us to their space, their sacred space, the Great Lakes Lodge. Thank you, Jeremy. And now I want to tell you a bit about Norm. Hi, Norm. Norm Dokis is a professional nature interpreter who uses the indigenous ways of knowing in his land-based teachings. Norm grew up on the land as a guide for tourists who visited his community of Dokis. With a lifetime of experience, Norm employs a balanced approach of storytelling, humor, bushcraft skills, history, and a variety of topics in order to provide a holistic educational experience. But I want to tell you, I can attest to his storytelling. I met Norm in 2020. I was going to say 1920, but that would be I saw this store on Wild Street that said Wildcraft and Arts, and I was just very curious. Norm had invited me to pick up some of his carvings for Clean Green Beautiful North Bay, and I walked in what I thought was going to be a 5-minute just chat with this gentleman. Turned out to be an hour and a half. And I couldn't leave. I didn't want to leave because every time I went out the door, he would tell another story, and I wanted to stay and listen. And I really got, it just inspired me a great deal. And I think Norm will say yes to this. We all have the ability to inform, serve, and inspire with our life stories. And Norm is no exception. So please welcome Norm Dokis, The Sacredness of Life and Land, a local indigenous story.
Well, I'm very, very happy and pleased to be here. I like telling stories. I like humor. I like my life. I like where I am in that medicine circle. I just think it's very important that we share our stories as lifelong learners, as lifelong teachers. We often say in our culture, our young ones teach us as well, right? And you can pick up teachings anywhere. And so Harry just told me 5 minutes ago, I love this room, she said. I'd like to come in here by myself and just watch the fire, how peaceful that would be. What she was describing was a teaching on the fire. The fire teaches us about our self-health. So how we basically look after ourselves first. And you know that because when you go by the fire, one of our first instincts is, I'm going to warm myself up. And I want you to clasp your hands like this and feel that energy, that self-love that we all have built into us. And then once we nurture ourselves and we're in that area of good well-being and that self-love, we could nurture others. And that's extending on to our teachings. So our teachings of, I'm going to learn this, but I'm going to pass it on to somebody else. And that's who I am. So I'm excited a lot of times to be a presenter and talk to people because number one is if I teach it to somebody else, I'll remember it. Number two, I've been empowered with this information. I'm empowered to share it. So I think of all the stories that my dad used to tell me and my mom. And I think about how important that is, that I need to pass that information on. And one of the things that is very sort of prevalent in our society, our indigenous society, but affects everybody, is colonialism, is the effects of colonialism and the effects of assimilation. So if I wanted you to be exactly like me, I'm controlling the story. I'm controlling the narrative on this. And that's why we also need to be unique individuals as well, and take that to heart. Because if from our story as indigenous people is through assimilation, colonialism, and residential schools has broken the stories, broken that chain of knowledge. Now my responsibility can't even focus on self-help anymore. It's lost. It's very lost. So it's important. Yes, we nurture ourselves, and then we nurture others, and we take care of each other. And part of our ceremony that I'm going to do next here is a little bit about that, with the fire in terms of self-help. And for the burning of the sage is in our ceremony is really now about taking our prayers and bringing them up to a higher place, where we could ask a higher being for help as well, in answering our call. And that's part of our spiritual beings. And spiritual beings, you need to be grounded. You could be grounded however you feel comfortable, but as a professional nature interpreter, I will tell you, take your shoes off, take your boots off, go step on the grass. If you don't feel like doing that, there's other ways of grounding yourself. Touch a branch. When you walk by the tree, touch that branch. Hug a tree, and you hear people saying, wow, no, I went and hugged the tree. I thought this was just corny. It was actually somebody from our last series where we spoke, and she came up to me, and she felt what she was describing was being grounded. And we separate ourselves too often by the fact that we are from the earth. There's only so many elements in that periodic table. And we're all made of that. There's not much DNA separating us from that tree. It's our cousin, right? And this is sort of our easy spirituality that we get from learning in nature. As indigenous people has often known, is it something just for indigenous people? Absolutely not. This is very, very inclusive for everyone. It's just that we are some of the remnants now of still being attached to that land. And our stories and our knowledge are still very powerful in that, right? And through the intensive colonialism that happened all over the world, not just here. Assimilation all over the world. And we've lost touch with nature. We've lost touch with our sixth sense. And so when we're out in the bush, we make fire, we gather something to eat, it's pleasing those ancient senses, right? We've got that connection. When we're here in the city and we go to the mall or we just buy it off a shelf, we've lost that connection. I make these big foraging baskets, and I use them sometimes to raise money and stuff like that. But, I'm like, think of this foraging basket. You go to the grocery store and grab, where everything is in the grocery store. But we don't know where anything is in the forest, which is our first grocery store. And we should. And so part of my journey as well is really encouraging people to get back onto the land, learn, teach, learn, teach, and through that cycle, we'll become better grounded with the environment around us. Because, very unfortunately, if we went out in the bush right now, you know, a lot of you will not know what that plant is, or what this tree is, or what that is. And it's not your fault. Even teachers, like certified teachers, I bring them out and I said, name one of our indigenous spices here. Nothing. Don't know one of them. So that assimilation, that colonialism affected everybody, right? And it's really about, what do we all have in common? We got to get back, we got to get grounded back to the environment. And back to the fire and self-care, self-love. We will find that. We'll find that inner peace, just like Harriet said, I'd like to come by myself and just sit by the fire. So I'll do a smudge ceremony, and I'll go around with this eagle feather. I'm not, I'm Eagle Clan, and I'm going to tell you a story about Eagle Clan. And so it's very rare I'm having a feather, but I found this one recently, and it just came to me, and I started using it. But I'm a giving person, and as an Eagle Clan, whatever I find as eagle feathers, I give them away. It makes me feel good. Just like at Christmas time is coming, it feels good to give, right? And I could come by you and with the smudge, and if you haven't smudged before, it's really about self-care, self-love again, but also in sharing with the Creator. So you could share your own prayer, whatever you wanted to do. But through that self-care is, I'm going to smudge my eyes so I could see the things I need to see. I'm going to smudge my mouth so I could speak good things. I'm going to smudge my ears so I could hear the good things that I need to hear. I'll smudge my soul, my heart, so I could be a good person and carry on these good teachings. And so, however prayer you want to attach to that, you're welcome to as well. And I'll just go around this way here. And you don't have to smudge if you don't want to. You could just go, I pass. This energy from this eagle feather is absolutely incredible. When I was saying, you know, clasp your hands together and you could feel that energy going through your body. When I'm holding this feather too, I could feel that sacred energy. We've come a long way in terms of reconciliation. I was at Cambrian College before doing a smudge, and they called like the police and security on us. They were like, what's going on over there? The natives are smoking something. It's still going. I'm not a good firekeeper. I didn't give it a chance to catch. Where did I leave off? There we go. Yeah, some seasoned smudgers. Right. Good. So as I was saying, yeah, being Eagle Clan, and in terms of my responsibilities with that clan, is exactly what I'm doing right now, is sharing, teaching, empowering a lot of times other people, working with other clans, and bringing people together. I grew up in Dokis First Nation, and on the weekends I would hang out with my dad most of the time on the trap line, and went like semi-nomadic. We went from little trap cabin to the next trap cabin, and learned a lot from the land doing that way. And one of my hobbies, because during the winter it got dark, 4:30, 5 o'clock, real cold, get dark around, in the evening and go down to sometimes minus 40. So we're staying in this little shack, and it gave me a big imagination. So yes, I enjoyed spending time alone. Actually, I learned how to harness the energy of that. And one of the things I did was, or had the ability to do, was leave my body. My soul would leave, and I would go through the bush, and I'd find an animal, and then enter into that animal. And then I'd be like that deer and working myself, and then I really became intimate in knowledge of the lives of those animals, their anatomy and how they moved and what they ate and how they socialized. And then, next night I would choose another animal. And this was a really fun hobby I had that I liked. And sometimes I would dream too, and it wouldn't be so much as a hobby. After it was sort of like an afterlife. I was living this second life in my dreams, and but I could never get into the eagle. Could never enter into that eagle. And I thought to myself afterwards, well, maybe because I am Eagle Clan, and it's not allowing me to do this. So, but one night I did. I got into the Eagle, and I was flying over land that I'm familiar with, and I don't know if you've ever been flying in your dreams, but it's a lot of fun. It's like, yes, this is pretty cool. And so I went to this white birch tree, this tree I know very well. And as I was getting there, there was a moose and a big fight going there. And as I got closer, to that tree, I seen there was a moose, there was a bear, and there was a wolf. And I thought, they were after the cornered the moose. So I landed in the branch, and I looked down, and that cow moose, that female moose was very angry. And that bear and the wolf were trying to calm her down. And I found this really, really interesting as I observed this. And the next day, I was here in North Bay, and I went by the North Bay Indigenous Friendship Center, and an elder was standing outside. And I stopped and I talked to him, and I told him about my dream. And when you're talking to these elders, a lot of times they process information. And they think about it, And I was thinking, is he going to respond? Or I wonder what he thinks about my dream, And he said, he said, the moose right now, he says, they're in a lot of trouble. And that bear is a protector. And that bear was comforting the moose, saying, I'm going to protect you. And the wolf, he said, is an educator. And the wolf was saying, I'm going to go out and I'm going to educate everybody about how we need to protect the moose more. And I thought, wow, that's a great story. And I memorized it, every piece of that story, and I'm really thankful for it. And then there was a group of scientists, and they were doing this study in ethical space. And one of the things they were studying was called the moose study. And so they heard of me, and they came, and then I was telling them stories from that perspective. But not exactly science, right? And it's not exactly factual, really, But I think we all have a responsibility. As I said, we need to protect, we need to educate. We need to carry on our species. We need to look after the environment. How do we do that? Those two ways that I described, And as a storyteller, often thinking about, bridging the facts. And why I say that is, we've only been dealing with science and exact facts for 120 years. Before that, it was all astrology before astronomy, right? It was all about legends before it was about these factual books, right? And so we've been all throughout society, thousands of years, power of storytelling. And keep that in mind and keep that going too. Because facts are good, but sometimes facts omit the spiritual side, the balance that we need to have in really bridging modern science with ways of knowing. Now, ways of knowing was a word or a phrase that came from indigenous country. Somebody brought that up, said that. And someone was saying to these elders, traditional knowledge, can we tap into your traditional knowledge? And they said, what are they talking about, traditional knowledge? You mean our ways of knowing? And our ways of knowing is also very powerful. It's describes basically our everyday routine of the way we conduct ourselves, right? The way we get up in the morning and put on our shoes and brush our teeth and comb our hair. But it's much more than that. It's way, way, way deep, and there's a lot of good examples in terms of the way of knowing. Our consciousness, and we talk about our spiritual being, our consciousness knows right away what's right, what's wrong. Our consciousness knows this way of knowing. It's built into us through evolution. If I was to get two children here, 2-year-old children, a boy and a girl, put them on a deserted island far away and let them grow up on their own. As they get older, one of the first things they're going to do, they're going to make a fire. They're going to build a drum. They're going to sing and dance around that fire. They're going to pray to the Creator. Why? How did they know to do this? And if we look at people and societies all over the world, that's what we do. That's really what we have in common. And that's a very powerful ways of knowing. So again, it's not exclusive. It's very inclusive. It includes everybody in that teaching of spirituality, right? And so we cannot discount that from fact. I'll just take a quick drink of water and look over my notes this morning. So my notes from this morning, I'm a much different person than I was just 4 hours ago. And I look at my notes now and I'm going, what was I thinking there? What was I saying? What frame of mind was I in? So imagine as you live your whole life, go back and you say, I want to go back. If I was a kid, I'd say this. No, you're a much different person at that time. In that medicine wheel, and there's a reason why this room's a circle and shaped like this, right? It's part of our learning journey. And that stage you're in now, in terms of your age, is like that for a reason. Your responsibility is looking across the medicine wheel, looking across that circle and see who you see. Little notes. Oh, yeah. Okay. I think I remember what I was talking about there. So I'm going, this weekend again, going to the land. And my stories come from the land, right? And I remember I never started drinking coffee till I was about 35 years old. And I used to go by these coffee shops, and I'm like, what are they doing in there? Yap, 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 yap. Everybody talking away. Coffee's a powerful drug. It'll make you talk. Yeah, okay. But I said, that's not for me. I would never be able to sit in there. And how I really became a storyteller a lot of times is that experience from the land, right? And I seen a bear a couple of weeks ago, and it knew I was coming, and it was a huge bear. And just like a cartoon, whatever, it went to hide behind a tree. It was big, though, so it picked two double trees to hide in, and it was peeking around the corner, looking at me. But I wouldn't have that story for you today if I didn't experience that. If I sat in Tim Hortons or a coffee shop, you know what I'm going to be talking about? Really? Superficial things. Baloney is seen on the news the night before. The sports team, okay, these are all, but they're really, you know, they take us away they actually get out of the way of who we really are. Our life experiences. That's who describes us. And I say this to Indigenous kids a lot, you know, there's a lot of pressure on our youth. Pressure to be somebody that you're not. We look at people on TV and say, look at their perfect lives. You remember like the Waltons and all this growing up and all. My life is no good compared to them. They're actually looking at our lives and saying, man, I got to get the hell out of here. I wish I had their lives. And this is important for young Indigenous people to hear too because of our high suicide rates. They don't think they have anything. But meanwhile, they have so much. So much. Going back to my childhood, yeah, I felt lonely. I come from a community of 150 people. And you know, you're living in a lot of solitude, so you got to invent ways to entertain yourself. And we did this by, you know, having the things around us. And that's a bit about my connection to the land. But if anybody could do this, and what I would encourage in terms of this part of my story is go observe. Look what's happening out there. You could get a chair, sitting in the middle of the bush. Boy, that's the best TV going right there. It's live entertainment. And you would not believe the things you see. It's absolutely incredible. Then you come home, oh boy, I got a story. You should have seen these squirrels and they're interacting, or whatever it is, you know. And I think that's what we're missing, and we need to get back to it. I think, you know, it's beautiful, pure entertainment. Because if you're looking at a tree, there's trees we have that are 550 years old. Small little cedar tree growing out of a little crack in the rock. And you look at that and you say, wow, that's an old tree. And it's living. Yes. So this is a teaching in suicide prevention. Look at that little tree growing out of that little rock. It's got hardly any nutrition, but it's holding on. And things are tough all around it. What's the meaning of life? Look, you've got to carry on no matter what. And that's where I take what I'm seeing and turn that into nature interpretation. So nature interpretation, you know, in doing this for a living, is identifying what you're looking at and turning that into a story. Also observe the animals, right? So I see a bear come into my garden. It didn't break anything. It hardly took anything. It ate a little bit and then it moved on. You wouldn't even be able to tell it was there, you know? And the reason a lot of times behind that is a lot of these animals don't want to destroy what sustains them, right? That's a nice teaching right there. So my history stems from that connection to the land, but my history is of the fur traders and a powerful fur trading man named Chief Michael Eagle Dokis. And he signed the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850. And so that treaty was signed in Sault Ste. Marie, area. And people would paddle. People would walk. Today, you know how far it is to drive to Sault Ste. Marie? Oh, I'm not going there. That's too far. But imagine, listen, I got to go there? Yeah, we're there like nothing. And they journeyed like that all across the landscape. And no maps, you know, except for little pictographs here and there, which told a story. But it was really about the names of things. So if I'm saying to my friend back then, yeah, there's good fishing, good trapping at Coco Lake, right? Oh, okay. Well, at Coco Lake is a rock there that looks like an owl. So it's very descriptive in that way, right? And I'm telling you all this because Chief Michael Eagle Dokis kept this amazing fur trading ledger. And why he was such a powerful, and I shouldn't say powerful, but you know, he was very, he did very well in the fur trade, let's put it that way, is his ability to communicate. Oh, well, we're just going to start with this one here. So he did this drawing, and then he did these little marks. And I'll go around and take a look at this animal that he drew. I don't have an onion in my pocket, but and no gift to offer this time. It's funny, I do these things, and sometimes I was giving out gifts. If you get the right answer, I give you an onion. Keep that little animal in mind. All right, getting near the end. Got it? All right. All right. Anybody got an idea what animal that is? For one free onion. No. Not a bejagongi. A bejagongi is horse in Ojibwe. Yes.
Badger?
No, close. Close.
Muskrat?
No. No. No.
Wolverine?
No. You'll know after I tell you. It's a lynx. It's a lynx. Yeah. And you see the nails, the claws now? And you see the short little tail? Yeah. A lynx. So a cat. Yeah. Bush cat. Sure. And so in his fur trading ledger, he had a special page for this because didn't get too many of those. But I'll show you what the fur trading ledger looks like. I'm gonna run now. Yeah. And so this was mid to late 1800s.
So each one's a pill?
Oh, yes, I'll talk to you about that. Yeah. Yeah. So this is the founding chief, Michael Eagle Dokis' fur trading ledger. And I'm told by Archives Canada that it's the only known one in Canada. Yeah. And I'm the caretaker of it, and which it's like fell into my lap. But what a coincidence! I love history. I'm Eagle Clan. I'm looking after this. I'm using and teaching today. Thank you to our ancestors for that. But yeah, these are beaver pelts being traded with the local tribes all over. So Dokis, again, being a very prosperous, there's the word I'm looking for, prosperous fur trader, rivaled the Hudson Bay Company. In fact, they offered him $25,000 in Matachewan, just like, go away, please. And our ancestors, our family, the Dokis, had fur trading posts in Abitibi, Matachewan, Temagami, and at the mouth of the Sturgeon River. And yes, traded these pelts for these items, and which could be a pair of pants, a new dress for the wife, an axe, some traps, some axes, a pipe, new pair of boots, all these things that were traded. But this fur trading ledger tells an amazing story, because up here in the top corner, you see a bow and arrow. And that is a person he's talking about. So this person is named Bow and Arrow. Or sometimes you see their clan name up there. And as the book goes on, he's learning to write English and French more, and he's writing their name. But most of the time, it's a picture of their face. And I'm going to show you that. And then you see this X here. The account is closed. Okay? Deal's done. All paid up. I'm going to skip right to this one, because this one's the most fun. And I'll go around and talk to you a little bit about it, but and then I'll tell you guys the same story after, okay? Sorry about that. But boy, if you had a physical defect, he would sure bring it out. Look at this guy with a big hunchback. Or Chief Round Eyes, all right? Or this guy with a pointy nose. But I used to think, you know, when I was a kid or a young student with this one, was they're spitting. Why are they always spitting? And it's not spitting. He's saying, I'll trade you this for that. He's showcasing their speaking. And this one, I'll save till I come back from those guys. Hi, guys. So as you heard, Chief Round Eyes, buddy with the humpback, he's going to trade. He's saying, I'm going to trade this for a new dress, it looks like. Yeah. See this picture here? Jerry, you're going to like that one. This one here. Quick look, no pictures, no cheating. Boy, I'm having fun with this today. I was on the chief commander this summer with these boards too, but it was like, you know how windy it is up there? I'm glad I didn't lose them. All right. This one you guys are going to like. picture. Yeah. Save that thought. You don't trust that guy, eh? No, nobody trusts that guy. So, and what did you say? You said forked tongue, right? And so you heard the expression, speaks with forked tongue. That's actually, that's true. So, oh boy, Chief Dokis didn't like this guy. This guy was like, yeah. And if you look underneath him, his account was never paid. Yeah. So he was lying. You know, when you're in a land of opportunity, it's filled with opportunists. So way back when, you have to learn how to sustain your resources. Just like an animal would, right? So, when the indigenous people were trapping these beavers, they always left a few behind in the pond. And I don't know if anyone here has ever trapped or part of a trapping family, and that's what you did. But when the beaver became extinct here, the beaver almost became extinct all over Canada, put it that way. But when the beaver were extinct here, it was the result of when non-indigenous people started trapping. They were very competitive, right? And didn't know any better, would take all the beaver out of the pond. And so our indigenous people said, we might as well do the same. Because if we don't, someone else is going to do it. Isn't that what destroys like everything, eh? Is that competitive knowledge. That's why we always go back to lifelong learning. Very important. Very, very important. And so, and a lot of these stories that I hear from trapping country were really super interesting. And you could get them and you could find them in old Hudson Bay records. One was that I found very amusing was C.C. Farr up in Haileybury. And he founded Haileybury. And at that time, predates Cobalt and predates New Liskeard. And he came to this country, got a job as a surveyor, and walked along the Ottawa River, found his way up there, and saying, well, you know what, I'm going to get a job with the fur trading, and had a fur trading post, and he looked after the fur trading post up there. So all those crazy stories he was writing down, it's called Tales of the Wild Northeast. It's a really, really good book. And it came out of the Cobalt bookshop. And so the guy came over, a buyer from some of the furs, and he says, hey, he says, I'm not buying this. He says, this is a muskrat with a mink tail sewn on it. And he says, no. He says, it can't be. He says, I bought it off of an Indian. And then he looked closer, and he says, oh, no, they're learning from us. They're learning from us. But again, I'm not pointing fingers. It's part of all of our history, really, you know. When you're, you know, if you don't have the right education on things, you know, Chief Dan George, you know, you guys remember Chief Dan George? You know, he said this great saying was, you know, mankind tends to destroy things he does not understand. So another good book I read was The Teachings of the Trees. And in there, it was describing all kinds. It was actually for nature interpreters. Part of the course for nature interpreters is check out how Joan Maloof writes. Check out how she talks and describes things. And so there was these two prisoners in the eastern United States that escaped jail. And they fled and they went out into the forest. And they lived in a tree, old growth forest. They lived in a tree cavity for 2 years. When the lumber companies came cutting the forest, they jumped up and said, no, no, stop, you don't know what you're doing, right? And it was amazing. The forest reformed these prisoners, right? They would have stuck in jail. They would have never had these teachings. They were cured basically mentally, you know, of all the wrongs that they maybe were taught before. And they were like, you know, almost like the movie Avatar, right? It's like, please don't destroy it. And the loggers are going ahead and, you know, they're just cutting trees. There's lots of them. And that's really, you know, the base of it, basically, you know, is we remove things, we damage things, we destroy things because we really don't have an understanding sometimes. And I think, again, you know, just going back, observe, check things out. If you could basically help preserve what you have around you by learning about them first. And there's these two young boys, Muptu and Deben, in our village. And they're fictional characters that I wrote. And I write stories for myself, basically, but I haven't published anything. But anyways, and they want to go hunting. And it's, give me the spears, give me the bow and arrow. And the dad said, no. Take this little walking stick. Go out and observe first. And they were resistant to that idea, but they came back full of stories, right? Porcupine, they came across a porcupine. And they said, you know, a fisher is the only animal that could kill a porcupine. And they watched, and the fisher went around that porcupine. Porcupine were walking in circles, and the fisher just flipped it over after and attacked its stomach. They went and seen the spawning fish. They went over. And they came back and told their dads, and they said, Dad, you know, these fish, they wouldn't bite. They weren't eating. And they said, well, the fish do not eat while they're spawning because they could eat other eggs, right? So these are all ways not nature. So the moral of all that story there was go observe first. Before you give it a spear, before you give it a bow and arrow, go look at what the heck's going on, you know? So that's a powerful teaching. Let's see if I got anything more within this. Oh yeah, here's some of the clans, and you could pass it around. This up here is Merman clan. So you know there was a clan called a Merman, and famous clans around here were Squirrel, Chinabo, and the Makwa, actually the blood of the bear. And so on these fur trading ledger too, what's really important is we could go back and look at, okay, what was the clans back then? Who were they? And I look at some of the pictures, and I see some of my relatives from other First Nations. I see those genealogy, right? Those genes carry on. And then other things you can do as well when you're out in the forest. I don't know if anybody here has ever done this, but go look at old dumps, old garbage, right? And I found some in Dokis because they were so wealthy in Dokis from the fur trade and from the sale of timber after, champagne bottles, expensive French perfume. But then you could see what type of diseases they were fighting, what kind of ailments they had by their medicine bottles too. All these kind of different things. And so it's a gold mine out there, really, if we're looking at stuff and interpreting and trying to understand what's happening. And sometimes I call it, once you get good at it too, I call it predictive methodology. So I'll be paddling down the river, someplace I've never been before, and I'll tell a friend, you know what? There's going to be a beaver dam around the corner on our left. And get there, sure enough, because there's a pattern. And once you're out and you spend enough time on the land, the story is written. There's only one way to tell that story. And we have writers that try to explain this to people too as well, through our legends of Nanabush. And sometimes they'll read that story or hear that legend, and it's like, didn't make any sense until you really think about it. It was so simple what they're trying to say. I went to an elder one time, and like I said, I give my feathers away, and I went to give him a feather. Oh, sit down, have a cup of tea. And usually I'm not a person to sit around and have coffee or tea. But I said, oh, yeah, okay. Then he tells me a story about this moose running around all over the place, young moose. And once in a while he meet up with his parents, and his parents said, watch out there, you're gonna get hurt. You're gonna get shot. Something's gonna happen to you. And no, that little moose didn't want to listen, took off, went again. Anyway, so I just sat and listened to this little moose story for about 10, 15 minutes. That night, when I was sitting there, I was like, hey, that little moose is me. That's who he was talking about. And then, but it was a good teaching, right? Watch where you're going. Take time to have a cup of coffee and a cup of tea. Relax, because you're gonna fall into trouble, and that's one of the things we happens to us after we take on too much that we can't handle, and again, that teaching's in the forest. So watching these beavers in this beaver pond. Oh, new family just moved in. And it's exciting when you see a new beaver pond. Young family, and they're doing their thing. They built their dam, they collect their food. And come February, it was bad, really bad. They starved. They did not collect enough food. The young ones did not want to help out around the house to bring food. So they dug holes through the pond, come out through the ground. And the wolves were waiting for that and killed them all. Killed the whole family, and it's just an abandoned house there now. So teaching on that, right, is if you're talking to young people and telling that story, help out around the house. We all live here together. Collectively, we all live in this big house together. So we all got to do our part. So, Chimagwech, everyone, for listening to me. Yeah. And if you had any questions, I love questions.
When did the chief die?
Great question. So the chief died, I do believe, in 1909. And why it's such an important question is everybody was after Dokis to sell the timber. And Chief Michael Dokis said, no, never. Just like he refused the $25,000 from the Hudson Bay Company, he refused money all the time. And they were writing, and it said, he's not easily swayed by money, right? And they said, sell your white pine timber. It's all going to burn down, which we know is false. Those big, big white pines, they're resistant to forest fires. Chief Michael Eagle Dokis died. The tricks were played, put people, part of our community who were not part of our community, and they outvoted the Dokis for the sale of the timber, 6-4. But those people that outvoted the Dokis are part of our Dokis community. And I was teaching history there in our community. I said, how am I going to say this without insulting anybody, you know? And because when you're talking about history, sometimes you have to say it, you know, you have to say it in the most truthful way. A lot of good came from the sale of that timber after. We built our own. First of all, it sold for $1.3 million instead of the $5,000 he was being offered. So that made Dokis the richest indigenous community across Canada or probably North America. $1.3 million. But, you know, we had to build our own infrastructure, our own school, our own church, our own roads, our own, you know, this and that. We built up our own community, or my ancestors did, but I'm remnants from that. But yeah, that's why I like questions. Yeah.
When did it sell for one point? What year?
I think it was 1911. Yeah. That's a lot of money. And then the government said, that's too much money. We're going to hold this in trust for you. But it's okay. We had some champagne bottles.
So who bought it?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think it was the Ottawa or Hardy Lumber Trading Company or something, but yeah. So our ways of knowing change. So you would think, okay, the timber sold. How could that negatively affect your community? Lots of ways. So when, like I said, those timbers are fire resistant. When they were all cut down, a great fire went through our community. And it's called the burnt now. They grew in the pine was growing in these thin soils, and the soils. But what happened was, in that burnt, those were areas used for hunting after, because you could see far through them. And with all that new growth from the forest fires, they became prime hunting territories in our community. Remember when I said the beavers went extinct? So the beavers didn't get back into this area till the early 1950s. Yeah. And what else went extinct here? Moose. Yeah. So the moose can't live without the beavers, right? They have, the moose has a very complex diet that's reliant on those fresh beaver ponds, all those new minerals, and that's in those beaver ponds, they need that. So, lots of changes happen. So when you wanted a deer back, before the beaver ponds, you would let the dog off on the shoreline and say, Sandy, go get a deer. And the dog will go, yes, master. They'll go into the bush, chase The deer comes out, jumps in the water, easy kill. Didn't even have to go out on the bush to get a deer. When the beavers came back, that changed everything. Now, the deer will just keep running around the beaver pond. They'll lose the scent of the dog. The hunting, that changed hunting. It was more challenging after, it was, but those are examples of like sort of like the butterfly effect, right? It's like one little thing will contribute to another thing. And it's amazing why we study history, right? Yeah. Yes.
You were the keeper of the ledger.
Yeah.
And the ledger, where is it kept now? Like you're the keeper, is it in a special place in your community?
Yeah, and it's also with Archives Canada. Sort of vaulted in our care. And they digitized it all for us too, so we could have it all digitized. Yeah.
So how do you become a keeper of it, or?
Just passed, like I said, luckily passed down through my family. There's been actually times I went to the dump and found historical papers. And I went, hey man, what's going on? No, new dumps. It's just people throwing out things that they don't think it's important, right? Yeah, they don't understand the importance of it. And it's rare. It's increasingly rare to get people interested in history, Yes.
This one, you said you sold the timber
Yeah.
off the land.
Right.
So does that company still own the timber off the land, or does that include the
Oh,
land?
I think it was just a one-time sale.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
That dream about the moose and how the wolf and bear were comforting, trying to get the moose to calm down. You said that the elder's interpretation of it was that it was like the moose are struggling right now.
Right.
What does that mean, struggling?
Well, I think they're having a hard time maybe through different forms of overhunting or parasites, habitat loss, whatever that might mean to each other, right? I'm not going to speculate what that is, but that's what the nature of that dream was. Yeah.